The host of this evening's meeting is Know Before You Grow, which is a subcommittee of Urban Chat. Thank you all for being here. We typically start off by introducing the dignitaries who have joined us. Maybe, was there some irony in there that we're dignitary? I'll start with the mayor, Kevin McDonald. Thank you for joining us this evening. From the council, I saw Dennis Boseke is here and John Schritt. So we damn near have a majority of the council. Great. And planning commission, we have the planning commission chair, Ray Cooper, sitting on the far side. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking time out of your busy life. Let me talk about upcoming events for Know Before You Go and Urban Chat. 3 weeks from tonight. It is 5 days from tonight. Man. In this very room, we're going to hear from Spirit Living development team. This is a senior living project that will be on the Caulfield Roundabout across the street from the Marriott Hotel. They have been going through the process for a while. They've got pushback from the planning commission about various issues, aesthetics. Personally, I pushed back because I'm not sure they do enough to activate what was always intended to be a active food decor for shopping, dining, etc. I'm not sure senior living is compatible with that. But I've been talking to them, I've been raising those questions. They're going to go back to the planning commission later in the year. They want to come talk to us and want out their message. So 7 o'clock Monday night in this room, will you join us? On the 16th, we have our monthly Urban Chat lunch. We normally do it on the 4th Thursday of the month, but I just thought Thanksgiving was a bad day for that. So we'll do it on the 16th instead. That would be, I guess, a week from tomorrow, noon at Aquas. That evening will be a GPAC meeting. For those not from Petaluma, General Plan Advisory Committee. We will get a second look at land use policies. After we talked a little about sea level rise policies last month, this will be another batch of policies for us to begin reviewing. I don't know which ones, but I'm sure whatever they are will be interesting. That will be at the community center at 6:30. It's going to be in person only, no Zoom. So if you want to participate, you have to be there. Yeah, about 10 minutes ago, we set a new form for November 29th. You know, we're dynamic. Because there's been so much talk back and forth regarding the overlay and what financial benefits it might bring to Petaluma. There is a nationally known expert guy, Joe Pinnacosi out of Asheville, North Carolina, who is the expert on the economics, finances of towns, including downtown versus sprawl. He has some great stuff. He has actually spoken a little before, about 7 years ago. I doubt we can get into that night. We're going to ask him to give us the best possible video recording to recommend. We'll do strictly a Zoom meeting, although we'll have a small group. Anybody who wants to do a meeting at the Live Explore office, and some of us can do it in group. And we're here to hear what Joe has to say about how density downtown really does work. And then just one more thing, December 6th, Wednesday night, we'll meet again at the Live Explore office to talk about the organization for this group. We have been growing, we've been doing a lot of cool things. It's time to truly figure out who we're going to be when we grow up. Bylaws, how we handle our financial structure, all of that. So end of the year is a good time to begin that. With all that preamble, our speaker this evening is Lauren Alexander of the Armony Companies. She is working with an Idaho developer toward the development of the Rovina Lane Apartment project. Lauren is a Sonoma County resident, Roder Park, if I remember correctly. She is here to educate, many of us re-educate us regarding affordable housing, the economics of it, the rules around it, etc. Lauren, the floor is yours.
Can you guys hear me in the back?
Yeah. Turn that off and I think that'll pick up fine here. So
So I recognize some faces and then some of you. Is there any neighbors to the side over here? Just go in the back. Okay. So the rest of you are on to the group participated in this often. Okay, so great. Some of you have seen this presentation, some of it's slightly updated, but I prepared a couple of different things. So most commonly when I present projects, people don't really know what affordable housing is and they have lots of questions about how it works. So I can do some of that if this is a group that would like to know that, but you just feel free to jump in, raise hands, tell me where you know what I'm talking about, and I'll move on, okay? So first, we're going to go to the next. Already. Okay, that's got it? Okay, great. So I'll introduce myself and the Pacific Companies, which is the developer, sorry, of record. I'll talk about what is affordable housing, do an overview of the project. There's kind of a general list of items that I find most people are interested in when we walk to the community that we're developing in, so I have that list for whatever it is for you. And then I can take questions at the end, but like I said, jump in. So Dave introduced me already, but my name is Lauren Alexander and I'm a co-founder of the Armony Companies. We're a small vertically integrated company that offers development services and construction management. And we work with the Pacific Companies, who's the developer on this project. I do site identification.
We do have a request that you use the mic from online.
All right.
And given that, I'll move this back.
Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody good?
We have, yeah, keep going. We'll see what feedback we get.
So I do site identification and acquisition for the Pacific Companies, and then I work with the project design team to design the project and then get it all the way through the local land use approval process. And then as a partner in the project, I actually stay on the team of the Pacific Companies in the project all the way through its lease up. So I'm sort of like the local relationship. I carry the history of the project origination, so I work with the other teams. But the Pacific Companies is a vertically integrated firm. They have pretty much everything in-house: architecture, development, pre-development, construction, asset management. And the founder of the Pacific Companies, who is Caleb, is the CEO and president. He's also the co-founder of the only automated modular manufacturing facility in the United States. That's called Audible. So they have that ability as well to do a lot of modular work in the Bay Area for affordable housing. Just a little bit of quick facts. So the Pacific Companies was ranked #1 in the country actually in 2022 for affordable housing development starts. That's the way they measure that. So they pulled over 3,000 permits, all in the Western US and the majority of those in California. They've developed over 20,000 units. They have 180 operating communities. We have a number of projects in Sonoma County. Some of these were my originations and some of these were not. 2 in Santa Rosa, 1 in Rohnert Park. You guys are familiar with, I'll show you pictures of it in a minute. There's one coming up in Cloverdale, just got financing that will get started next year. And another in Scottsville that's under construction, and if you've driven along Bodega Avenue heading out to the coast, all that grading that's going on is our project. Okay, and we do it all. So we do family, seniors, special needs, everything from rural towns all the way to very urban environments, upwards of 500 units at a time. These are just some pictures of local projects. So that's Sonoma Gardens, that's on Santa Rosa Avenue. That was built before I came into the mix, but the very first project that I worked on was actually in Cedar Grove, which is there's Healdsburg, that's a small one. The next one is Cedar Grove, that just finished last year. That's on Santa Rosa Avenue as well. Go to the next one. This is the Rohnert Park project. The University District was the Brookfield development, and we did the inclusionary housing for that project. So that at the time was the largest affordable housing development, single development on record. So that's cool. Next slide. This is the Sebastopol project called Woodmark Apartments. Those are just renderings because, like I said, it's just starting construction. It'll be a really beautiful project for a lot of really much needed housing. That's a farm worker project. So I'll get into what is affordable housing, and again, just let me know if you want more detail or less. Affordable housing is it can be used as a distinction in many different ways, but in this case, we're talking about is publicly subsidized affordable housing. This is housing that's funded primarily by state or federal tax credits and tax exempt bonds. Though there are, those are like the two primary programs for getting financing at the state level. There are also a bunch of other programs you may have heard about before. The California Department of Housing and Community Development is the administrator of many different programs that you can get financing for housing, affordable housing. And then this type of housing is restricted to incomes. So each unit is assigned a, first let me start with, does everybody know the term area median income? Yes, okay. So each unit is assigned a percentage of area median income, and that stays the restriction on the unit for the life of the project, which is typically 55 years. And then rents are determined based on 30% of that area median income. So there's just in case you're not familiar, the 2023 AMI of Sonoma County is 125,800 for a 4-person household. That's not low, that's quite high. And which is why we need so much affordable housing. And this just gives you an idea of when you have a household of 4 that's renting a 60% unit, they're earning 75,480. So this is not, it is relatively low income, but also these are people who are just working in our community. It's just yeah.
Is the 4-person household considered like 2 working adults and 2 children?
Yeah, typically, and the incomes range depending on the size of the household. So I use 4-person just because it's a really nice average, but yeah. Okay, I'll get it there. Okay, next slide. What a lot of people don't realize is that when we use financing that comes from a government source, state or federal, it comes with a lot of regulations. So we have very, very tight restrictions on what we can and cannot do. The rules are hundreds of pages long, and then we undergo oversight when we use these funds. So when we apply them to a project, that project gets monitored on various levels, including that the state will send somebody out at least once a year to look at the property and make sure that we're following all the rules and regulations. Every funding source has its own regulations, so the more subsidies that you pull from, the more rules you generally have to follow. Which is why sometimes you'll see projects that have 5 or 6 one have a whole host of things that may not make sense from the outside. Because each program is meant to do something different. It is privately owned, so the eventual tax credit, I'm relatively new to this business, and so I did a little bit of research to understand it. It's kind of neat. So public housing was something that the federal government used to do, but there was no incentive to upkeep it, which is where you got slums and things like that most people think of when they think of affordable housing now. And so the tax credit was meant to privatize affordable housing and incentivize developers to build it. And so these projects are owned by the developer. That's big companies will own this project for at least 15 years. There's some exit moments between the 15 and 18-year mark where they can sell it, but it stays affordable. Okay. It's leased just like a market rate unit. Everybody signs a lease that has rules. If they don't follow the lease, they can be evicted. We use local management companies. There are 3 primarily that we use, and they specialize in this type of property because there's certain regulations to follow. There's usually all the properties really have at least one on-site manager who lives on the property, works at an office, and is also leasing a resident situation. So I can talk with some of the neighbors who have had several concerns about how the project will operate, and if there's a problem once it is operating, what would they do? In some cases, we've had neighbors who have sort of form a little coalition, and they can work with us directly to resolve those problems, and we would do that with the on-site manager.
Who are the 3 firms you use?
I don't know what's on the top of my head. The one that is, I don't know who's doing this one. Was the one doing Cloverdale? I can't remember. I can look it up for you afterwards. Just can't remember. All right, so this is the location of the project. You can see there's like a little rendering here to show what the project will look like at an aerial view. Whichever, so I'm just gonna use my hand. So the Rovina Lane here is a public road, intersects with Jacquelyn, and then right around here, Rovina Lane turns into a private road, and it goes out to Petaluma Boulevard South. And then I think you run probably all from.
So Petaluma Boulevard South is at the top of this.
Yes. Next slide. So the site is an acre, it's got an R4 zoning with the highest density in Petaluma. Yeah, there it is. I think it is, yeah. With a density allowance of 18 dwelling units an acre. We are building 32 units, which is obviously over that. We are using state density bonus law. Because it is 100% affordable, we are allowed to use an 80% increase in density on the site. That'll be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. And I'll show you the site plan in a second, but it's 2 3-story buildings with some surface parking, some tuck under parking. It is on a slope, so anybody who walk by, you can see that there's already on the site an existing retaining wall because it's just a very slow site. And it slopes all the way down to Petaluma Boulevard South. So we're going to be doing a significant bit of grading to bring it level, so we can maximize the density on the site. We are putting in 1.5 parking spaces per unit. There's a lot of different takes on parking. I know that this is a group that does a lot of thinking about parking. What we know from having so many properties is that on average, our properties lease best and operate best when we have at least 1.5 spaces per unit. Obviously that can vary from, you know, I just entitled a project in Oakland that's 100 studios right next to a art station. We don't need 1.5 spaces per unit. That's the whole idea. Out in rural places like Cloverdale, you do need more parking. So this is an average. We thought that this would be sufficient for this location. Ingress and egress is going to be off of Rovina Lane. I'll show you that in a second on the site plan. There are some on-site amenities for the residents, a small playground, barbecue area, a little open like turf space that'll kind of double as storm water retention. And as far as our process with the city, we applied for entitlements under SB 330. Are we familiar with that? Okay, it's a streamlining process that does a couple of important things that I'll just mention too. One is that it restricts the city to using only their objective standards when approving or disapproving the project. And then it also sets certain timelines in the process for deeming the application complete, and just kind of sets more of a template for how the process should go.
You're not using SB 35?
No.
Why?
We will retain it. 2 reasons. One is that you have to pay prevailing wages, which
We don't want that.
the other is that in this area in particular, there's a sort of a loophole in SB 35, which is the tribal monitoring allowance, which has caused us a lot of difficulty in the past. I think it was largely an oversight when they wrote the bill. But it basically gives any tribal entity that has interest in the project unlimited amount of time to hold the project. And that may not have been a problem in this location, but we have had trouble with that in the past.
So how much do you save not using union labor?
What's that?
How much do you save not using union labor?
I mean, it really depends on where you are. I mean, on this project, I think you probably save, well, let's put it this way. The project wouldn't be buildable with prevailing wages unless we were going to attach on these 2 other layers of subsidy. So we have to go for money from other sources, ask the city for money to make it pencil. It's very challenging to do.
I'm not familiar with SB 330. I thought this project was coming in under SB 35. Can you talk a little bit about it? 330?
Yes, and I think we are also going to have another community meeting. We may have another community meeting. This is something most neighbors have questions about as well. It is a process that basically says you, as the applicant, can submit a pre-application to the city that says it's a very simple form. This is what the project is going to be, and it locks in the zoning and the land use designation of the site at the time you submit a pre-application. As long as that pre-application shows with the city's or the county's approval that you meet the requirements of the project, which is the checklist criteria you have to meet. And then from there, you can submit a formal application, usually just using a city or county's standard type of application. And it just puts some timeframes on those other, yeah, so when you submit your formal application, the city has 60 or 90 days depending on the size of the project to say if you've completed the checklist of items that need to be submitted. And then when they review the project for compliance with the local ordinances, those ordinances have to be objective. So they can't be subjective in terms of, most often you see this in like a design review where there's a board that has preferences about certain architectural types, but it's not written in an ordinance somewhere. And so you see these projects that sort of stay going back and forth, and we really prefer to see this, and it can take a long time. And while not all cities or counties are like this, it can be recognized against the developers. And so the state came in and said we have to figure out a way to not have this keep happening with hearings. So that's really the gist of it. There's a lot of complexity to it, but that's really important.
It basically takes the city planners kind of out of the equation, correct?
Well, the city planners are still really important because ordinances can be very complex. There's a lot to pay attention to.
No, I know, but just in general concept of it, the idea for 330 was kind of a workaround to not, to kind of take cities, I guess, out of the design phase.
It takes the subjectivity out of it. So it takes away the opinion-based requests of the developer. And you know, every city and county is different. And some cities and counties have a lot of those. A lot of unwritten sort of what they would call regulations, and it means that the developer can't, you know, they go in and they have no idea. You know, they have no idea what the rules are, what the constraints are, and it can take a really long time to get things developed. We go into a whole history about it, but this is one of the reasons the state is starting to interfere, is because the housing crisis that we're in largely stems from the cities and counties for decades and decades and decades have been making it hard to develop, and so we just have to be able to keep up with population growth. Really. Okay, you know, this is not the best one. Where should go the next one? Yeah. Okay, there's the site plan. Yeah. So, Jacquelyn's here. Rovina Lane runs along the top, and then if you were to keep going across the picture, you run into Petaluma Boulevard South. Okay. You can see the labels, there's a lot on the site, I'm sorry, but this is the newest one. I want to make sure that it was the most up to date, but this has a lot of notations on it. This is what we've submitted to the city. So you can see building 2, building 1 labeled there. Those are where the units are. So the bottom floor has units, and then tucked under parking that's tandem. So there's, you know, cars in the row, and then the top 2 floors are all units. Then we have some service parking here. There will be a small sort of like dog park, dog run over on this corner here. And then a play area, 2 play areas. This will be like a top lot, you know, like a little jungle gym for young kids. And then an open space for barbecues and things like that.
You mentioned, a couple times you said that Rovina runs out the Petaluma Boulevard. Has there been any change to the plans that we talked about, which is that there is no access to Petaluma Boulevard to do that?
No change yet. If there is gonna be a change on that, I wouldn't expect it to happen until like early next year. Just based on the property owners on the other side there, the situation in there, and we just won't have a resolution on it. It is something that we want to continue to pursue. At the very least, having a pedestrian bike access out to the boulevard just makes a lot of sense. To have that.
What are your conversations with the next property owner?
So Rovina Lane, the private part of Rovina Lane is owned by a couple that own 2 parcels, and the southernmost parcel is the one that owns the land under the easement. And that easement was created in the 40s for access and utilities. That's literally all it says. So when we first looked at doing this project, it would make a lot of sense to have it connect out to Petaluma Boulevard South, just from a traffic circulation perspective and ease of getting to public transit. But we conferred with attorneys and really it would do what's called overburdening easement. So if that property owner thought that we were using it unfairly, they could take us to court, and the consensus was that they would have a really good argument to say that we're overburdening it from its original intent. Utilities, though, would be put under the lane that's there. That's something that's considered very sort of standard.
You know, of any intentions for what you describe as vacant lot? On the right hand side?
Oh, that's the city's property. So the city owns two, it's a large parcel, but on the front, it's cots and people's housing, or people's.
Service center.
I believe that's an acre parcel too.
I'm sorry,
I believe that vacant lot's an acre parcel also.
it is, yeah. We did discuss with the city, developing that lot at the same time as this one and having one larger project. But the city has many projects going on, and they were not quite ready to, have that conversation. It's still something that could come up in the future. They don't have plans to do that.
So how optimistic are you that that might change?
But the city,
Yeah,
so there's two things about that. I think that they will come around to wanting to do something with it. The problem is going to be that there won't be a contiguous project, because we can't really, the way that state tax credits work is the state tax credits are for this plan. We can't just go back in and change the project. However, we did contemplate it when we were making this, designing this project. So potentially this area could be redeveloped to sort of have a connection that goes through the property out to Petaluma Boulevard South. There is always the potential that Rovina Lane becomes like an access easement for the whole parcel. So there are some things that could be decided. Did there any questions about this segment?
I'm sorry, Lori, because that's a vacant lot,
Yeah,
part of which is owned by the city.
the whole vacant lot,
Owned
yeah.
by the city. Is it possible to, put a road out to the boulevard from that vacant lot into the complex, ease the burden of the traffic flow in the.
I mean, yes, that's always something that could be discussed. Right now, there's kind of two issues with that. One is that there is an existing commercial building on the front of this vacant lot that runs the frontage along Petaluma Boulevard South. So it would require essentially tearing that building down, which is a whole project that the city would have to be ready to do, have the capital to do. Our plan or our proposal to the city was to tear down the building and build a new commercial shell along with the units. So it would be like one long property that had residential units, commercial at the front where their tenants could stay. And then there would have been access through there. But having access by itself is not, it like doesn't work on the site essentially. Not until they're ready to redevelop it.
If I could just make a suggestion, Lauren, from a procedure perspective, I'm guessing people on Zoom are not being able to hear questions from the audience very well.
Oh,
If somebody jumps in with a question today, you repeat it quickly before you respond.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Not used to that. I'm usually on Zoom, so. Yes.
Laura, I know that you know this, we've had a discussion, but just for the benefit of anybody who might be interested, we're a neighborhood group very close to that, actually part of Jacquelyn and Rovina. And one of our concerns, not only for our own safety, but for the people who are going to be living there, is there's very limited evacuation routes in a high fire district. And to add 32 units without any, evacuation to the boulevard without going through already a tight neighborhood is something that is a major concern for all of us. And that's why we hear a lot of questions already about how can we get to the boulevard, how can we add another street through vacant lot, or what else can we do?
For those on Zoom, there's a group of 4 neighbors that are here, neighbors to the project site. And there's been lots of discussion questions in other venues about fire safety. So emergency vehicle access to the site, given that this is a higher density project for the neighborhood. And there's a couple things that I would say is every city has a fire department, and the fire department has to review plans for fire safety based on state laws and local laws. So they, that review has been done at least once, no, I guess now twice, because we met with fire prior to submitting our application to make sure circulation would work on here. And just so that, you understand, there's a couple things that they looked at. One was, can they get a fire truck from Rovina Lane coming into the project? So you can see that there's like a little map that looks like a turning radius. You see that, the dash line? That shows that there's enough room for a full-size ladder truck to make a turn into the project. And then they have what's called a hammerhead here, where you can turn in, they can back out and exit the project. And then we also, the private Rovina Lane acts right now as an emergency vehicle access for those properties on the other side. So that can also be used. They need to come in through Petaluma Boulevard South instead of going through the neighborhood. They would just come right in the private lane.
But in terms of evacuation or, disaster like we talked about Center Road a few years ago,
Yeah.
with the Corey Heights neighborhood and KB homes and keep adding up there, and the existing homes and now 32 units here. I don't think it's far-fetched to perhaps envision a real problem, major fire where everybody is trying to get out at the same time.
So you're asking about evacuating their actual residents, so not fire getting in or emergency getting in, but people leaving property. That's a good idea, actually. So one of the things that we're gonna do in the next few months is have another discussion with the property owners that own that easement land about at least walkability and bike access on Rovina Lane. And something else that we might put in there is a clause about emergency access. So in the case of an emergency and the evacuation of the neighborhood, that the residents can use that Rovina Lane to get out to Petaluma Boulevard South. Not a bad idea. It's already used for exit. Yeah.
So I looked at that property and a couple, right in front of the, exit there, go across, there's another path that's asphalted, that goes down, but it's got, but on the other side of the road, there's a bit of a gate, at the other end, for pedestrians can use. That could be used as, I think, another emergency exit. But the real question comes into, there's a couple properties that are just to the, I guess, the upper right, as you go up the hill. There's like 3 properties that are still not constructed. And I was just wondering if you looked at or talked to the original, whoever built the tracks in the first place, did not build those 3 properties, looks like. There could be 3 homes or larger. So do you know anything about those properties there, and why those were not built? Because I'm looking uphill and there's like a ravine uphill, and I'm thinking spring water maybe coming down that area was a possibility. So I just thought, why those were left unbuilt in the development issues. Obviously, there's a reason. And I think it's all, there it is.
Yeah, so I'll answer the first question. I think you're talking about a walking path that's blocked by a gate. That's the Rovina Lane that we're talking about that goes out.
Well, no, there's really like, and then right in front. As you go.
Oh, there's an alley.
There's
Yeah.
alley,
There's
alley that.
Yeah, that was left there by the developer that did that subdivision.
I think there's a walk, if I can get through that way.
Yeah, there is, yes. And that is a public right of way. It was there. I'm not sure what the original intent, if it was, whether it was like walkable access out, or if it was just a, extra space that was left. I don't know the history of it, but it is there and it is publicly accessible. And then for the second question, I do not know the history of those 2 parcels that are vacant. But Mike might know. Nice to city planner. I think there was an application in for a project on the site. I don't know what happened to it though. Was it multifamily? Kitty corner. Yeah, kitty corner to the Jacquelyn and Rovina.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that was talking about.
My understanding, talking to Karen, who's director of housing, is that there was a development proposal on the site, but they ran into too much opposition and didn't want to move forward with it. And I don't know what kind of housing it was. I don't know if it was single family.
We have a request from Zoom to ask what the ACC is on the site plan.
ACC.
That was my question back.
They see it marked on here somewhere.
If they can see that on the Zoom, I would be impressed. So I'm guessing that this is a term of art.
Okay, well, you let me know when they.
I'll, yeah.
Okay. Any more site plan questions? I do have more pictures to show. Yes.
Now that you have this updated site plan, and when we met with you some months ago this summer, and I asked about moving the dog run and the trash enclosure to the backside of the project, you said it couldn't be done because of your, the turning spot for the fire truck, but it looks to me like it's pretty symmetrical there. I don't understand why that couldn't happen. Looks like both your buildings are about the same width. Your access, your driveway is pretty much down the middle of that property. I'm not sure why you couldn't flip it.
That's funny, because I did go to we had a meeting shortly, sign team had a meeting shortly after. That.
Yeah.
I did ask them, but I can't remember what they told me.
Like,
They're-
it's all really kind of doing this, the bumpers for fire truck.
Yeah,
Is it the depth of each side and where the trash is? You would have to take the part and then move it over there.
Yeah, you basically take the dog run, the trash enclosure, and put it towards the city property. And then you'd add your parking spots up closer to Jacquelyn Lane. And at least get the trash and that was something I asked, and you said, no, they can't do that because the turning radius for the truck, fire truck.
yeah, no.
Like fire trucks are in left or right, all those fires, they have maps, like all these apartment complexes, so they know where they're going when they go into these places, so it would be on their map, so.
I can't remember. Can I can get back to it. I
That's
don't.
kind of an important one for me.
Dog run, you don't like that dog run.
I don't like the dog running like a traction closer. On that spot.
It's really far down the road.
Well, I know they're all metal and you're. Makes a big ruckus. That's not gonna be friendly to the neighbors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'll have to get back to that one later. All right. I mean, it's. I really just don't.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, the other thing I was looking at, the property going down, actually went down that lane, walked down a little bit, drove up a little bit, looking at it. But on the lane going down, it is, developable into a full road, looks like. Going down, and you have to pick up some of the land from the city property, the cops land, but this is maybe a utility underground, but pretty much an easy run all the way down kind of the boulevard. So we actually put the road on the city property, maybe, instead of even dealing with it running the lane. I was wondering if that was a consideration.
Yeah, we've talked about this because I believe that the requirement for a public road is it has to be 26 feet wide. I think it has to be 26 feet. As it sits, the lane is only 15 feet, I believe. So yes, if we were gonna make it a public road with a public right of way, it would have to be expanded, and that real estate would come from the parcels on either side. Because we don't own the city's parcel, if we were going to widen the road, we'd have to have permission from the city or the owner of the other side. Or we buy the other side and give ourselves permission. But yes, it would have to be widened. We can make it a private access road, or keep it a private access road, so if we did get permission from the neighbors on the other side, we could potentially just have it service this 32-unit project, and it would be private, make it just use it themselves, it wouldn't be a pass-through for the whole neighborhood.
Right, so went up there, it looks like 3 separate properties, old, like old farmhouse, building and new boulevard. Behind it is pretty run down, glass house operation, and then you come up to the actual nice house that's in full top. So it looks like, and the house at the bottom, it looks like it's pretty old, still maintained, but it's an old structure. So I was wondering if there's any possibility of, if the owners of there were going to give up those properties to all.
You're talking about the buildings that front Petaluma Boulevard South?
Right.
Yeah, that's the city's property,
Uh,
and it's an old house that's converted into a commercial space.
Oh, no, there's still an old house there. On the, if you're at the middle, it's on the right side.
Oh, on the right side, yes,
Right.
that's the,
It's an old building.
yeah, I'm
It's
with you
fine.
now. Yes.
And behind it, I'm sure it's a very rundown, it used to be a classic house, group house was there, it looks like it was farmed at one time. as a greenhouse of some sort.
Oh, yeah.
And
So the parcel, so there's 3 parcels in a row along Rovina Lane. The one that's closest to the projects are right out this entry is owned by a couple. They bought the next parcel in from the guy who owns the property on the corner, is my understanding. So they now own 2 parcels and he owns the third that's up along Petaluma Boulevard South.
Right.
And apparently made the worst real estate deal of his life, and that's what I was told. So, yes, I think your question was about widening.
yeah,
Rovina
right
Lane.
now, on either side, either the city side or the private side.
Yeah.
Because the city side looks like it's also, there's enough space to actually put the whole room outside.
Yes, it is all possible, you just need.
Not even that three possibilities, you just sort of,
Yeah.
just a little bit of parking to take it out.
Yes, widening the road, there's definitely space to do it, you just have to have permission from the people that own all the properties to do it.
In the funds.
And well, yes, and the funds. So part of the, you know, whenever you do a project like this that's publicly subsidized, you're going in and you're saying to the state, we have these project costs for this project to build it out. And in those project costs, there are certain things that are eligible for state tax credits and certain things that are not. Things like, widening a road that accesses the site would be considered an eligible cost, but it has to be tied into this project. So if we want to go back in the future and we want to widen that road, we have to come up with a way to pay for that because it won't be connected to a housing project. So either we have to do another project on the city land and tie it in that way, or we'd have to go get some other source of money that's not a state tax credit or tax exempt bond, some sort of grant for public roads, or we'd have to work with the city on money that the city would have access to do public improvements.
Do you have commitment on the tax credits?
No, we
You
cannot,
don't have any,
no, we
you're
can't,
you're in the hunt like every other development.
yeah, we can't apply for state tax credits until we have our land use approved.
What's the AMI mix on the project?
It'll be 30 to 60% will be the units.
Yeah, 100% of the units are in the 30 to 60.
Yes, except for the manager's unit, which.
Sure. And what's the bedroom count?
There will be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units.
How many bedrooms?
Uh,
I think you had that up there.
yeah, there's a table, but it really is too small to see, so. I don't know the total bedroom count.
I think it's 60.
Is it 60? Oh, yeah, it's a parking, right, we can read that number. Yeah, 60.
So I have found the ACC.
Okay,
It's on the site plan that we sent out. And a number of the units have, or the rooms, I could probably have ACC on them.
It's accessible.
Oh,
It's accessible unit, I guess.
oh, yeah.
okay. For the sake of Zoom, those are accessible units. Oh, I will give it the finger. There we go.
We can keep doing questions, but if you want to move to the next slide, we have some elevations that show what the project will look like in colors and materials. Try to match the neighborhood, you know, it's not meant to be a standout, it's just a sort of blend in a little bit more modern approach on what the houses are now.
That's gonna stand out in the neighborhood.
Anything,
That's gonna be huge.
especially something you don't want.
Anyone who wants to drive down the Gallup, take a look past, Freeman, there's a 2, 3-story apartment buildings going in, and you go stand there and get a good feel for it. How big it's gonna be in that little neighborhood on that 1 acre site. It'll be a big building,
It is, and I have a lot of people,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of people.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
very,
In looking at placement of housing, pardon me, it's really speaking first story.
You will, I actually have a rendering that'll show that, so we can go to that in a second, I'm gonna take this question.
Well, my more general question, do you want to answer that first? I'm following then.
Where am I supposed to say? Next one? Yeah. Okay, so these, so there's a series of images like this. This is a rendering to show what the project will look like from different vantage points around it. So this is the viewpoint if you were across Jacquelyn and looking down. So you can see that this, remember, the site is I think it's a 20-foot change from this corner down to that corner. So I think that's right. So there's gonna be a significant amount of grading, which means that the building is gonna sit quite low. So from Jacquelyn, if you were walking along Jacquelyn, you'll probably see the second and third floors, but you'll have a hard time seeing the first floor. You can go to the next slide. This is from the corner of Rovina Lane and Jacquelyn. So there's a home, single family home right here. So this is like more or less what they'll see, again, second floor above. And then down here is where the property for, the property owners that own the easement. That's what their view will be. There will be a wall and a fence. We've talked with them and they asked us to do some screening, so we'll put in the fence there and some trees, at least some nice trees. Okay, next slide. Oh, this will be what their view looks like, but then instead of just a building, there will be like a fence and some trees there. And then next slide. This will be from the city property. So if you were walking down that private part of Rovina Lane and you looked backwards, this is what you would see. This is probably the only vantage point actually, you can see all the stories. Next slide. This is what the project will look like, again, from the city property, but if you were on it towards the fence line.
Like in the carports. Carports, if you can, something too.
The carports?
On the left side of the photo there,
Yes.
you
Oh, that's
show
perfect.
the carports all along the edge.
Yes, that's parking. I think this will be the playground area, this parking and dog run in this corner. So you see that retaining wall, that's gonna really. And like, if you're standing in the dog run, you're essentially gonna have tall 10-foot-ish walls on either side.
That's.
And then, next slide. Oh. There was a view from the, from above, people really miss the second floor. Let me take this question first, then.
Yes, in replacement facilities like this. I noticed that if there was a walking distance of a park, I guess the beginning of the Riverview Trail, and there's a place for children there, and there's a school within walking distance. I don't know that's a private school or a public school. And I wondered where a public school was that to be. I wonder how you get children to school. And if that's a private school, how do you get subsidies? If that's the only school that's in walking, how do you get their education subsidized? The other than education, it seems to be at the school that's there, the park that's there. Food is something I'm always concerned with. And how close is it? Is there any walkable supplies of food? And I'm looking at how the effect that has on the number of parking places required and the number of people driving all the streets. If you have to drive the streets to get food, that is why you need 1.5 cars per house. Whereas if there was a market within walking distance, and I was wondering, has your firm done anything, come up with any method as a society that we can locate houses within walking distance markets rather than just seem to randomly locate them wherever the land is for sale?
Mm-hmm.
And as what can we do to see to people have food for walking distance, especially if we begin to limit carbon usage?
Yes, it is a big, it is a. You're touching on a, what I would call a philosophical orientation of housing and like in urban planning that is very important and has not been the history of California. So the way things that are developed right now that we can't really change, right? I mean, like I as a developer, if I want to build housing, I only have so many choices about where I'm going to be able to put it. I don't get to choose where the grocery stores are and where the transit is. I kind of have to do my best to find something that's in the center. And the state has built-in regulations. So the state tax credit program and the tax exempt bond program are competitive programs. And the scoring system weights being walkable to all of the amenities that you mentioned: libraries, pharmacies, grocery stores, schools, parks. For seniors, there's other amenities that you want to be close to, a hospital. And the truth of it is, I guess somebody who looks at real estate all day, all throughout the state, there's very few places where you can find real estate that gets all of them. Because that real estate is taken up by other higher income producing uses than affordable housing. Affordable housing is not a high income yielding asset. You know, these properties, this will probably have a net operating income of like 50,000 a year. It's like the point is to break even and have a little extra for contingency. The state actually compresses what you can earn on affordable housing properties. So yes, all of that is important and very ideal, and we do our best to find it, not only because it's the most efficient thing to do, but also because we're incentivized. That's how we get the money to build a project, is the more close we are to amenities, the better we score. And you know, it's like we're limited, the neighbors ask this question, like, why this piece of land? And really the honest truth of it is, there is not much multifamily, high density zoned land in the city or in any city really. And so we have to choose what we get. It's real bad. And it's why we have such a big housing crisis. And it's why the state is imposing so much force on the jurisdictions, because they know that this is a problem when they're trying to override by saying you need to rezone properties so that they can tolerate higher density, so that there are more choices to do exactly what they're talking about. And in the meantime, it's sort of like you do the best you can and get as much housing built as you can in the most reasonable way you can. It's not a very sexy answer.
We have an additional question from Zoom, which is, when do we get to see the landscaping plan?
Oh, the landscaping plan has been submitted to the city. And are you guys updating the new, I don't know if you'll put up the full plan set. Okay. Yeah, there should be a plan set up for the city. Yeah, so there's the full plan set is available on the city's website. And I think the very last sheet is the landscape plan. So you can see there will be an updated version that just went into the city today.
And then just to reiterate, one of the things that we talked about when you and I and Dave talked, whenever that was ages ago, that yes, it would be wonderful to have something that was within transit and walk distance of food and all of that stuff. But the fact is that most of the clients that you expect to see here are driving to work anyway, and Petaluma doesn't have transit to get people anywhere useful.
Yeah. There's a lot of different problems, and it's development projects are very publicly, especially right now in this climate, that like development projects get a lot of public viewing, right? Because we have forums like this, there's public hearings to review them. So we tend to you tend to hear about a lot of the existing infrastructure problems in this kind of forum. But we don't have, you know, like the state tax credit system doesn't include us developing a bunch of roads or building a grocery store next door. I mean, I don't live anywhere I can walk to a grocery store, and I live in a subdivision. I could walk to a kid's school, but that's kind of it. Everything else I have to drive to. I mean, reasonably, right? It's like my nearest grocery store is probably 4 miles away. And it is really bad, but it is also just like the state of things right now. And the good news is the more multifamily we build, the less pressure there is on the entire housing market. And the less that means costs come down. It has a whole cascade of events, right? Costs come down for construction. The reason so much single family gets built and so much for sale project gets built is because that's the only way developers can make money. Even market rate housing that's multifamily, they can't make money hardly. Like their margins are so bad, interest rates. So just more housing stock has a cascade of positive consequences. They're just not going to be tomorrow, and they come with construction noise. And that's like, well, yeah, I get it.
Did you say you were gonna do this modular?
No, not this project. No, it doesn't make sense to do this one modular. It's too small. The economies of scale aren't there to make it worth it. But it is very cool. If you like technical things, you can look up audible.com. There's some really cool videos in there. I've been out there with creating these modules in. It's like giant Legos. It's pretty neat. Yes, Blake.
I just had two quick questions.
Sure.
What's the average square footage for the units, and then how many disabled parents?
Average square footage of the units would be so our one bedroom units are usually around like 750 square feet. 2-bedroom is usually around the 900 feet to 900, and then 3 bedrooms get up to 11, 12. Yeah. And then handicap parking, is that what that's about?
Yeah.
How many spaces? But I think it's 3. Yeah, it's either 2 or 3. They just have to be they have to be 30%.
Not for me, I think we had more questions from the audience, it's better to get on like the Zoom. So, question? As the host, or are you? I think you're- Okay. Well, we will try to make our standard approach, and see your hand going on in just a moment. I know there's some people who want to make a longer comment, I'm one of them. But what we try to do first is questions, which means 30-35 words, answer the question mark. When we talk to questions, when we all know everything, we wonder about the project, then is the time for comment. So, questions, Dwayne, your hand is up, or question or comment, no, the mic.
I have never needed a mic. Just quickly, the gentleman commented about the noise and trash can, can you commit to plastic lids on trash can?
I believe the garbage, the actual structure is ecology. They determine what, and just like you do, just what bins you get is what you get, that's what's available. Most of the ones that I've seen in the area, which are commercial, granted, are metal with a plastic lid. I can't guarantee that that's what's gonna be, but that's up to the trash.
Petala's climate goals dictate less driving, and I'm wondering, can you decouple the parking as a cost from the units that would help both in the affordability for someone moving in and have our climate goals? Do you ever decouple parking from rental?
So, I'm wondering, talk about on so when you rent a unit, you don't necessarily get a parking place, but you then have to pay for a parking place separately. Now, I've been told by Mid-Ten that that's not legal under the low income tax credit rules. So I'm, okay, apparently I'm one step ahead of you on that one.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna know the answer to that, I do not.
Okay, that's what they told me, that's I understood, so.
I mean, it's a fine idea, you run into the same problem with this subsidized housing, the nature of the people who live here, they're not like, I mean, you have parking.
It would be a deduct, not an add. If you think you need to get $2,000 for a unit, you don't need to get 1,900 if they didn't buy the parking space with it.
Right.
So as we push people to use our bus service, which is key, then they would not need that space, it would save money.
I don't know anything about that, but it's an interesting idea, and, speaking of bus, because you mentioned it, as soon as people come up, there are 2 bus stops that are out on Petaluma Boulevard South, that don't go anywhere. I think they go to the center of town, if I'm not mistaken, but that's it. They might not even go there, do they?
Yes, I think they will get back to the little market, but the problem is, I chair the transit committee in town. We could never develop ridership on that run. So it used to be the Route 5, now it's called the Route 501, and it only runs twice in the morning and twice in the afternoon to get kids primarily to Petaluma High and Petaluma Junior High. So unfortunately, it's not very effective for adults, but it just wasn't ridership. So, no. That's true. As the mayor points out, Golden Gate Transit does stop there. And actually, in some ways, it's easier to get on a bus to go to San Francisco than it is to go downtown. Transportation is. Or to the bus, agree.
Well, I don't know if the size of this project will warrant any change to that, but it is not uncommon for us to work with the local transit authority to increase the number of stops or bring a route in when we are making a significant increase in the population, so we're definitely open to that.
Well, and you've actually had another affordable housing project recently opened down that part of town, the 951 project on Petaluma Boulevard South. So I think you want to reach out to me, I can put you in contact with the transit manager. I'm guessing we're still not there on the ridership. Closer, let's start the conversation.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, and we're back on some there.
Yeah, I mean, that's right up there. He has a comment, he's waiting to read it.
Okay.
If you go back to the slide that actually was the schematic of the actual view at the end of the meeting, on the first slides.
Yeah.
That one right there. Okay, I was looking at the little squares at the base of the actual parking and coming in and out, and that looks like it's actually 2 parking spaces, one behind the other is what that is.
Yeah,
And it's learning about the length and width of the sites and how you're putting in, kind of again, electricity for, assuming that they're gonna be turning to EV cars and bikes, scooters and everything. How are we set up for, electrical capacity to enough hookups for, smaller cars and micro-mobility? If these folks decide to set a big car, they go to smaller car, what actually fits? What's the length and width of each of those? And are each one of those associated with, like 2 spots, associated with 1 unit? Like back to back, and it's only 1 unit, so there's actually 2 per unit or concept.
that time's usually 8:30, so that was a lot of questions. Okay, so, first electric vehicles, so the state is all over this, because we have this goal to get to all electric vehicles by 2030. 2030, something like that. So there's a lot of requirements right now, this changed last year, for making electric vehicle charging stations available, and then doing what's called electric vehicle ready. So that you have the infrastructure that goes to the space, but they don't have to be available right now. In anticipation of the fact that we're gonna be moving towards more electric vehicles than less. So all these EVC that you see, these are all charging stations, right? And these EVR are ready for charging. So you can see that they line both sides. So that's electric vehicles. These double spaces right here are called tandem parking, and the architect came back with this. I'm new to this business, so I'm not a background in architecture. I was like, how the heck is that gonna work? Like, what happens if this guy wants to go to work and this guy's still parked there? Apparently it works in the system when they lease it, where they assign them to units and they know who's gonna, that the owners of the cars are gonna be the same people in the same unit. That's how they make that work. Presumably you run upstairs and be like, hey, move your car. And then size of the parking spaces,
Size, width and length of the total.
there are regulations for this, for the very reason that you asked, they all meet the regulations that are required for sizing to work for the type of turns that they have to make. So the end spaces, I just wanted to the other day, these end spaces have to be 10 feet, which is wider than a standard space, which I think is 9. Specifically because they have to come out of an end and make a tighter turn. So that's all written in codes that we have to follow exactly.
Right, so I think that there's 2 spaces there, but if it's long enough, if you get smaller cars, you can actually get 3 cars in that.
I mean, unless you have one of the 10 smart cars, you need 3 of them.
Yeah, smart cars, 3 smart cars.
Sure. Whether that would hold up in the lease, like in the lease agreement, you know, there's gonna be a manager on site, so if somebody came in and they said, we wanna do this, they have to build it into their lease.
But also they have 2 cars and maybe 3 bikes for the kids.
Oh, there's bike parking.
So bikes also will get involved, EV, they have to charge, and charging stations. With bikes also.
I don't know about that. We don't have any charging stations for those. I would assume that if we're gonna have electric vehicle chargers all over the property, that adapting some of them to be available for bikes will not be a problem, if that becomes widely used enough. Remember, these are low income families, so electric vehicles, electric bikes, at this point in time, not within reason, that's bandwidth. Yeah, there's covered bike storage, the city of Petaluma has a big requirement for 3 different types of infrastructure. So we actually just modified that, it's fine. Mike is very thorough.
Any more questions? Okay, comments. Last question.
Nice.
One of the things that I was, from that memo that went out, could you explain why you picked that site?
Why I picked the site? Well, it was for sale and it's zoned for the suites. And it's not a bad location, frankly. I mean, Could it be better? Yes, you know, it could be closer to a school, to this gentleman's point, you know, it could be closer to a market. The city annexed this property and a set of properties right in this area into the city from the county, and a few years back, I think it was in 2018. And when they did that, they pre-zoned the properties to be multifamily, specifically because the city does not have enough multifamilies at the and at the time that they did that, they have to follow a process where they look at the effects and consequences that the development will have on the surrounding environment. And environmental impact report. So that study was done before we came in. It was zoned for this use. It was for sale. I had come across it a number of times, and you know, it's a neighborhood that doesn't have any multifamily, but if you can think about from, you guys have mentioned a number of times concerns about the residents who are going to live there. These are people who are going to come in, these are family units, they're going to come in with kids, they're probably coming from neighborhoods that are not great, not particularly safe. So they get to go into a neighborhood like this that they would never otherwise have access to have safe streets, places that they can run around and play, and like that. I mean, I didn't even know about the horror stories of the housing situation that most people are living in that 30% AMI. I mean, since I started this work in this county, the stories are pretty horrific. I mean, it's really terrible. So they might not be able to walk to school, but they'd be very happy with a brand new unit that does not have mold, has running water, has a toilet. You know, like that's the standards.
The 30 to 60 AMI.
Yeah.
And the 1, 2s, and 3s. You have to have the same, you know, will your mix be 1 bedrooms have the same number of 30% and 60% has 3 bedrooms have 30%. You understand?
Yes, I understand. What even distribution?
Yes.
Not always, and in this case, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's usually a pretty good mix.
Is it a mandate to the directive you're complying with?
Not that specifically, no. What they look at more is they want to know the overall average of your area median income targeting.
Could you have all 60%?
Can we have all 60%?
If you get applicants that are all 60%, you pick them over a mix of 30s and 60s, you're obligated to do some sort of mix.
Those scoring regulations incentivize having a mix, and you get more points the deeper targeting that you're doing. So the lower the AMI
For
unit
the tax credit.
for both programs, tax and
But that's your capital bill, and what obligation to apply to that after you bill.
Yeah, but we have to, when we apply for tax credits, we have to declare what our units are gonna be, and they have to stay that way. Yeah, there's no option to change them.
Or if I may, for the record, we've got, I think, 43 emails in our neighborhood, list of concerned citizens and homeowners, but you mentioned a second ago, that people are concerned about the height of people that live there. And I can't recall a conversation or email from any of the people in our group that are, we're concerned about traffic, lack of parking, density, already a high fire district and evacuation. Those are our main concerns.
Understood. I didn't mean to imply that that was the comment, more just that comparing where people are coming from to where they're going to be and how we chose the site. It's a family friendly, safe environment. One of the reasons I thought this certification. And yes, all of your concerns are the sort of normal ones that we hear. And it's, I don't want to minimize or trivialize the concerns because I live in the neighborhood. I understand like I want home and all that. However, I have seen where those projects happen and people are really worried about what's going to happen, and then they get built and it's not going to be as bad as they think it's going to be. And there are lots and lots and lots of, I mean, California, I think might be outside of Manhattan, the most regulated development state in the country. There are a lot of rules we have to follow to address the concerns that you're talking about, and we have to follow all of them. And they're there for that reason. Yes, those concerns.
You have other, there are housing developments where there's parking behind each other for two different apartments is actually work.
Tandem parking. I've not personally done one, but the Pacific Companies has done several, and it does work. I had that question when the architect showed me the plan. I was like, I don't understand this, but apparently if they assign to the unit. Because remember, these are 2 and 3 bedroom units, so you're gonna have at least 2 adults that are working, and we all know that that means more than likely you're gonna have 1 or 2 cars. And if the tandem parking has to be shared amongst units, there will be an arrangement made about how that will work. I'm trusting these guys because they manage thousands and thousands and thousands of units, so they have a system. We wouldn't do it if it didn't work, because remember, we have to own this and operate it. So if we give ourselves a big mess, we're the ones that have to deal with the big mess.
Couple things, we're here talking about affordable housing and subsidized housing, state taxpayer money. But aren't we, after this construction with prevailing wage rates, aren't we just kind of kicking the ball down the street? Like, most construction people are low income people. And I just don't understand that piece, and we're so concerned about doing this low income housing, but it's not done with prevailing wage rates, prevailing wage trades. So we're just gonna be building this thing with low income people. And then one last other thing I had thought for this is when the good people of Pacific communities move on and then sub out the property management, it's not really their calling. And a lot of times property management, that's a tough piece to have a real good proactive property manager. Not that I'm sure there's really good people out there, but I'd like to see developers hang in there and manage this property for the city.
Or do you want me to address that, or do you want to?
That's my goal. I mean,
Do you want me to?
sure, if you want to.
Okay, so second comment first.
Sure.
The property is owned by the Pacific Companies, so the financial state of the operation is their problem, right? Whether it's going well or going bad, it is absolutely the consequence to them. The management company that comes in and hires the property manager and then manages the lease up, that is a company that they hire for most of their projects in this region, because they specialize in what is a very highly regulated and compliance-based process of leasing. There are a lot of rules that we have to follow about how we have tenants in there, where the tenants come from, the documentation that's required to put them in the units, how the units are audited, because remember, we're restricting these to certain incomes. We have to verify that those people stay at that income level. If they change, we have to know that. There's a tremendous amount of work that has to be done. And there's a reason that these management companies specialize in it. They don't do anything else. But we still own the property.
No, I get it. I'm just saying, if you own something, you tend to do it a little better, and you guys are a vertically integrated company with architecture and construction and property development. It would be nice if you put that last piece in there to manage this and control this property.
We do have an asset management.
But you said you guys have a property manager you hire to run.
Yes.
So that's not in-house, that's not you on top.
Do you want me to explain it, or do you want to?
I understand what you're trying to say, Steve, or you guys source it out, but I'm just making the comment, if you guys are here to manage it, which you're not really, you own the property and you're not managing it, once you finish construction, it sounds like.
I mean, it sounds like that to you.
That's my opinion.
Yeah.
Back to the question, if I could, do your tenant applicants need to come through, county COC or other, you need to be referred customers, or do you do this just open market?
Yeah, it's open market. If we're using Section 8 vouchers, we would have to go through the housing authority.
Do you accept vouchers?
This project will not, does not have any vouchers on it. You can either do, be a section 8 voucher, can't remember what the term is, like recipient or user, or you can get project-based section 8 vouchers. This doesn't have either. So this is completely open market. It'll get,
If someone brings the voucher with, they're eligible in your project. If they're a person who has a voucher for the camp.
I don't believe that we can take the voucher, but I am not certain on that. I don't believe we can on this project. This goes, one of the things that we are required to do by the state is, market the availability of the units, to as many local groups as we can. So this is not like we put this up on apartments.com. This goes to as many local, entities as we can get that would have access, be able to put this in front of the people who depend for it. We always try. The state also puts a restriction on how we are allowed to select tenants, so we can't discriminate and say we're gonna do all Hispanic families. We can't discriminate and say we're gonna do only single moms. That's not allowed. As against the Fair Housing Act. But we can do something where we say what is best for the community is to house people who already work or live in the community and need better housing first. So we always try to do that first. And it's not hard to do because there are a lot of people that need housing. There was a project in, I think it was Elk Grove that opened marketing and got over 20,000 applications for 100 unit. There's no shortage of people that need housing and qualify for it. Especially people who live in a community or work in a community already need the space to live. Okay. Did I answer? Do you have another question? Did I answer your?
The other question was on prevailing wage labor and what it would take to actually pay prevailing wage.
Yeah. You know, I'm not sure what to say about that. Prevailing wage is not nearly as straightforward as it sounds. I was just asking about this the other day because it's not a specialty of mine. There are different rates of prevailing wage and they are different than unions. So a union is unionized and they're all together and they get training and there's a certification that you're getting a certain standard of labor when you use a union and you pay them a union rate. Prevailing wages don't necessarily have to be paid to a union worker. And I don't know how they're set. I believe it's a Department of Labor. This Department of Labor. You're not in your head, so you must know more about that than I do. You know, and it's a fine comment to make, and it's such a mess. I mean, it's such a tangled mess of things. Like, there's no simple answer to that question. Are there people who live here that aren't documented, that if they didn't have construction jobs to go to, wouldn't make a living? That's your ass. And they need jobs, and we use local labor on our jobs. So the project management happens out of Boise, and the superintendents live in California, and then all the rest of the labor is local. We use all local subcontractors, so it feeds an economy that's there. And God, I mean, it's a mess. They might ask me as I'm talking. Am I allowed to say that? It's not something we can solve. You know, it's like we're just
And I believe that to your point earlier, the issue is that this is something that really needs to be solved at the state funding level.
There is that, but also it is a statewide problem. I mean, this is not, we really end up in a situation of we have to use prevailing wages. It literally is impossible to build a project, or we could still try to get it funded and it wouldn't happen in a lot of places. And that's actually why Caleb went out to design this manufacturing facilities to solve that exact problem.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big problem. Yeah.
Will be the commitment developed to address the concerns with getting in and out, access to the boulevard, moving the plan. These are all things that the neighborhood is really asking for. Possibly a reduction in member. I know we talked about that before. To have a maximum of 18 state law. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, what will be the commitment to try to make this work?
Well, for the three issues that you brought up, so the unit count went down by 2, this means, and that's percentage wise, decent amount. Can't go down anymore, otherwise the project is not feasible. And we are allowed by state law to do it. As far as the dog run, I really just can't remember. I know I asked them because we had just had that conversation, and I think, you know what? I think that part of it is that you see how the trash enclosure has doors that swing out. You see that on there. There's some sort of regulation where if the doors have to swing out, you can't count that space of the swinging radius as a turnaround. And I feel like that might have been the reason, but I can get back to you. And then the third one was access. We are following. I mean, the commitment that I made is, and the only commitment I can make at this point really is to keep working with the neighbors on Rovina Lane. To negotiate, at the same time, I would negotiate the, allowing residents to walk and bike down Rovina Lane and use it for emergency vehicle access of residents leaving for emergency, sorry, I said that wrong.
Yeah.
Emergency access for resident vehicles. And I can't promise that because it's private. I mean, they can take us to court. That's a legal issue. I don't have any control. Yeah.
The other thing, looking at your elevation from the site plan, is that you have the dog run and the trash down there 10 feet underground. So there's a really good sound wall protecting that from the rest of the development. Whereas if you put it on the other side, you'd be broadcasting all of that noise back up into the development. So having it there against that retaining wall makes a lot of sense to me.
I can't make any more minutes. That's about all I need.
Or a quick question on parking, let's say, the unit developer goes up and it's filled to capacity and just based on, you know, driving habits and needs and who's there isn't ample parking. So it turned out to be a greater need than 1.5 per unit. What do we do? Are they gonna spill out into the street and that's just, it was unfortunate planning, or what's the contingency plan for parties?
I don't have, there's no contingency plan in a place where, in a city where there's no on-street parking option, which the city's not, we would have to do something like pay for permitted parking spaces. I lived in the city of Mountain View and duplex, and I'd go to the city and be like, hey, I need a permit, because there's not a parking space, I need to park on the street, and they issue out a certain number of permits. Some cities have programs like that and some don't. And there is no other contingency plan other than what I will tell you is that it sort of corrects itself a little bit. So if a tenant comes in and they're like, we have 4 cars and we're only saying that they can have 2 assigned parking spaces, they're gonna have to look somewhere else. And the same thing goes in reverse. So where people are like, we have no parking at all, and they're like, well, we have a car, like that studio project I talked about in Oakland, they will find somewhere else. And it is one of the reasons that we had the state started, and this group probably knows more about this than I do. The state started allowing much less parking on these projects and actually encouraging less parking. So we tried it, and we have a handful, about 5 projects that are under 1 parking space per unit. It just isn't working. So we go back and literally redesign a bunch of projects to put in more parking because we can't operate them. At some point in the future, I assume that this will be a thing that we can do, but right now it's sort of like this all electric requirement that's happening in buildings. It's like this great idea. The equipment hasn't caught up yet to service 100 units with 1 electric heater that's in the base of the building. Not a thing. And so everything has to catch up, you know.
I'm living in no garage, a single wide driveway. My wife pulled over, we reconfigured it, we had exactly the situation you see here. Yes, it worked. The only difficulty was when I moved my car with 2 minutes to go to Super Bowl. But other than that, we did just fine, and you sort of sort that one out. The other one, less frivolous than that, is this question of access to grocery and other services. A number of folks here in the room were part of the effort to get a 15-minute neighborhood report done through the AIA. We are now pushing to get a lot of that implemented into the new general plan. I think this site illustrates one of the challenges we have.
4 or 5 years ago, there was a project here in Boulevard South. There's 4 acres of land that home of Art Knopper. There are a range of different apartment prices, sizes, etc. Try to think of a number of projects. And it included commercial space. And potential was for a grocery store and maybe childcare. Because it wasn't under anything like SB 35 or SB 330, it had to go through a full planning process. They got frustrated. I wasn't part of it. I can't say how legitimate or frustrated it was, but they finally walked away saying, we cannot plan. And the planner sitting in front of you should not worry about the fact that will get covered by it. I'm not answering the question here. I'm just saying this is the problem. We are now in a world when we create these projects like this. People and those services, projects that need service, or the services that we really not just make it warm, really walkable to the site. We take it to the planning process, and I don't know how to solve that, but it is a good problem.
Yeah, I'm part of a master plan, in a very, very large master plan in, Concord. It's the first master plan that I'm a part of, and there are firms that this is what they do, but these projects take 30 to 50 years to get done. And you can imagine, I mean, at the pace that technology is changing and environmental policies are changing, they're designing this project right now. They'll get it all approved in the next 2 to 3 years, and then that's the plan. And so as stuff changes, it's like, you know, it's really tricky, and I don't know.
I just wanted to make a comment tangent on that. I know that the state's attempts to get rid of single family zoning and a lot of residential zoning have frustrated a lot of small cities. But to the point that you were just making, and to the point that on food and services from earlier in this meeting, this is why there's been so much effort by the state to override cities in this regard, because I can tell you if you tried to put a grocery store in that area and get a conditional use permit and zoning map adjustment and all of that, we'd be a year, maybe 2 years in before you get a small community market. When in reality, if we're allowing for mixed use by right, if we're allowing for these zoning changes in the first place, it's much more realistic to have a development that's going to have a small community market or have a pharmacy or have kind of these smaller commercial shops that might be helpful. So this is just a comment to say that I know bills like SB 9 and others have frustrated people in the past, but it's because of this restrictive zoning that the states had to do it.
Oh, no, I was just pointing out that Blake was there.
Then, any other comments?
Okay, we'll take, sorry. And because I'm right next to the mic, I can just speak loudly and blow their ears out. We do have a few comments on, about, lack of trees and kind of the heat island effect on Zoom. And, I note that there's a park a block away. And yeah, you don't have a landscape, or you submitted the landscape plan and we don't have those drawings here, so.
Yeah, the landscape plan will show, again, state of California, very stringent policies on how much tree coverage and shade there needs to be per square foot of pavement that's going in. It's a very complex calculation. And so all of those are being met. There will be lots of trees. They go in and they're small, they do grow.
And am I correct in that the tandem parking is tuck under?
Yes.
So there's building on top of that. It's not just large,
Yeah.
Expanded. Okay.
Yeah. The only uncovered parking is on that surface parking.
Right.
There's quite low number for most of the projects that I see, where it's just like, you know.
Acre. Land is expensive. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think when we first talked, I didn't see, there's a 400 square foot area for 13 to 18-year-olds for playing.
Yeah.
What was that about?
That's a tax credit regulation. So there's a square footage per number of units you have to provide for open space for different age groups.
So there's 400 square feet for teenagers to kind of hang out. Very exciting.
It's just a little basketball court.
There's gonna be a basketball court.
It's a very small basketball court, but yeah, it's usually like a basketball court.
Yeah, we, in a project this small, there wasn't a lot of space to put much, but in a larger project, we have something like, doing a project in Antigua, that'll have a pool.
Yeah, bocce at the Cloverdale one, didn't you? And then
Well,
they hated it.
Oh, they
They hated the bocce ball.
You know, I actually have one
Yeah.
say that Hispanic people don't know how to play bocce ball.
It's actually ball. Yeah, they had.
That was. So. So yes, it is small. There's lots of regulations for like, I don't get it, but they have, they have to draw the lines. There has to be a framework, and some of it really doesn't make sense. But it is the rules.
Dan, anything else on Zoom?
I think we've covered it.
Wow, we appreciate your commitment to this. Thank you, everyone, for coming. After 5 minutes, spirit living conversation, which will also have a lot of interesting aspects to it. Thanks for